Hello, everyone. My name is Theo Wright, and I use he, they pronouns. I'm Clemeth from Southern Oregon and Oglala Lakota from South Dakota, and I'm a fourth year undergraduate student double majored in environmental studies and American Indian studies. My project, titled Let's Get This Ball All Us, Supporting Indigenous Student Well-Being Through Food Sovereignty, considers the impact of participation in food sovereignty practices on the well-being of Indigenous students. Ball All Us is a Klamath word that means bread, so my title refers both to food and also the grind culture that is very prominent in university settings, as in, let's get this bread. I conducted this project with Michael Yates from Westervelt Intellectual House as my site supervisor and Jean Dennison from the American Indian Studies Department as my faculty advisor. Food sovereignty is often defined as the right of peoples to healthy and culturally appropriate food produced through ecologically sound and sustainable methods, and their right to define their own food and agriculture systems. In the past decade or so, food sovereignty initiatives have been increasing throughout Indian country. This is because food sovereignty has been recognized as such a key tool in resisting the effects of colonialism. Culture and cultural activities have been identified by multiple sources as protective factors for Indigenous people. However, unfortunately, data on Indigenous college students is lacking and often focuses on perceived failures, failing itself to offer pathways of support and placing all burden on the students themselves. Ultimately, this means that to support well-being for Indigenous students, there must be a foundation of cultural identity on campus. With this context in mind, I further focus my research on these two questions. One, how does participating in food sovereignty practices impact the well-being of Indigenous students? And two, what are the best practices for engaging Indigenous students in food sovereignty? I conducted my internship during my time as food sovereignty liaison with Westervelt Intellectual House. My responsibilities consisted of managing and caring for the native garden, situated at the UW Farm location at the Center for Urban Horticulture. If you've ever volunteered at the UW Farm and seen the plot with the fence around it, you've seen the native garden. During my internship period, I also conducted research using three primary methodologies: Indigenous autoethnography, semi-structured one-on-one qualitative interviews, and a literature review. Now let's get to the interesting part. Like every good Indian uncle in training, I wanted to structure my results by telling a story. Many of you have probably heard of the Three Sisters polyculture planting method, which involves growing corn, beans, and squash together in order to provide support for each plant as they each help the other grow. The drawing you see here was actually done by me as part of my autoethnographical data set, as I learned from the Three Sisters during my time caring for the garden. Keeping with our Three Sisters theme, I want to move from the top down, starting with the leaves and stalks of the plant. Here, our theme is development of identity. Food sovereignty practices not only contribute to food-specific cultural reproduction, but also provide a safe, supportive space for Indigenous college students to explore what it means for them to be both Indigenous and a student. There's a large population of Indigenous students who go to universities and are part of an Indigenous community for the first time. Spaces that offer support and guidance for Indigenous students during this time support not only identity development, but also mental, physical, spiritual, and cultural well-being. In addition, students who learn cultural skills and protocols at university will often take those skills and teaching back to their own communities at home, thereby continuing the cycle of support. I chose to have this theme be represented by the leaves and stalks of the plant because identity development is a big part of a student's future and will guide them through their life beyond college. Leaves and stalks on a plant may not be as glamorous as the fruit or the flowers, but they ensure the plant will grow to continue to grow healthy and strong for seasons to come. Moving on, the flowers and the fruit of the plant are representative of how sovereignty is community, and those two concepts cannot be disentangled. In order to be sovereign people, as we are via federal law, we must prioritize community, especially while we are in these institutions. Through this project, a few ways we found to build community are to make sure students know they are valued in the spaces they occupy, even if they come in with zero prior knowledge, to encourage students to attend events and get involved in community. This can be difficult, as one of the significant barriers I found to participation was access and scheduling conflicts. The Native Garden is either a 25-plus-minute walk from campus or a bus ride. Many students, especially Indigenous students, are already being pulled in many different directions with events pretty much every day. This makes it really hard to attend things, especially during high academic pressure periods like finals. Finally, to view students as complete individuals and care for them as community members. This may seem basic, but understanding that students, especially Indigenous students who face significant barriers simply due to institutional neglect, often need some additional support personally, professionally, and academically. This is one way we can care for our Indigenous students. I chose to represent community as the flowers and fruit of the plant because it's a very visible and tangible way to see how people are doing. Gatherings like powwows are representative of a strong, thriving community that comes together in celebration. If we don't have community, something's wrong, just like I'd be worried if a squash plant produces no fruit. Lastly, the roots of the plant. The roots are representative of the need to break academic hierarchies. I'm sure everyone who's interacted with a professor knows that you'll reread and spell check your email to ensure complete professionalism, and they'll just message back something like, sounds good, sent from my iPhone. This is because there's an inherent power imbalance to Western academia. The student is lesser than the professor for no other reason than their position as a learner. In Indigenous spaces, we can work to dismantle these hierarchies. Some ways we can do that are by emphasizing Indigenous worldviews and rejecting harmful Western hierarchies, understanding that successful campus spaces are not just occupied by Indigenous people, but created by and for Indigenous people. Lastly, we must step back and acknowledge the wealth of knowledge within Indigenous food sovereign spaces, held by students, faculty, and community members alike. Finally, I chose to represent the dismantling of hierarchies as the root of the plant because it's not immediately visible, but it plays an incredibly huge role in ensuring the futurity and longevity of these practices and spaces. Moving on to our discussion section, this project focused on food sovereignty practices, but ultimately became a love letter to Indigenous communities as a whole. Food sovereignty, as every interviewee explained, is so much more than simply a meal. To be food sovereign is to nurture identity, share stories, and continue the cultural practices that have been systematically devalued by generations of colonialism. In addition, food sovereignty practices on campus are vital to overall Indigenous health and well-being, both on an individual and community scale. I asked Dr. Diane Million to share what she would hope people's takeaway would be from this project, and she stated, tell people that we really love to make these welcoming spaces, which encompasses the love, care, and passion that go into all of these projects, practices, and spaces. We do this community work because it's part of who we are. If you could have just a handful of words as a takeaway from this project, I hope it's this. We must invest in Indigenous mentors, staff, and faculty, invest in spaces that support and uplift Indigenous students, and adapt existing spaces to incorporate Indigenous values. Indigenous students are healthy when we are not only allowed, but encouraged to embrace our indigeneity during our academic career. I'd like to quickly thank Michael, Jean, Eric, and everyone else I worked with for this project. I'd also like to thank my family, my friends, my roommates, and my partner for their endless love and support. And finally, I'd like to thank the plants in the Nave Garden for the teachings they so willingly share with me. Subketja, thank you so much for listening, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.